how do I breathe better, right? I mean, who here wants to know, how do I get more carbon dioxide in my body? How do I get the 3-lane highway? So how about we go into the how segment around the assessment? Can you talk about what we're going to do and then how people here can participate with us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to do an assessment with you, and everybody else can do it on themselves. So that's really nice. So we'll all put our hands on our bodies, and I'll show you where. And then during that, we're just going to notice. So you don't have to specifically watch, you can just feed into yourself, but I'm going to be obviously watching. And what you're looking for is to see what you notice. And at the end, we can kind of share some of that, or partway through, maybe we'll have a quick check-in and share it in the notes. So the first one is, Tracy, if you can actually stand up behind your chair.
Go my position. Okay, so she's going to assess my breathing and talk me through it. You can watch, or you can go into yourself and do the assessment for yourself, whatever is best for you. But I'm going to be, and I have not done this before, so I don't know what we're going to do. So prefacing. Okay,
so we're going to put one hand on the upper chest, and everyone can do that if they want to. And the other hand, we're going to pull down. So the thumb goes in the squidgy bit just below where a bra strap would sit, or the split of the ribs. So it's actually got to be the way you can really feel the movement. And then your little finger down towards where a man's belt buckle would be. So really rested down that hand. And you'll feel like halfway-ish somewhere down that hand is your belly button. So think of that as like an equator line. So you've now got those two hands, and that bottom one is really well spread. What we're looking for is there's 3 points. So the upper hand is 0.1. You've got 0.2 being the thumb, and 0.3 being the little finger of the bottom hand. And what we're looking here is to notice, first of all, nothing to do with the hands, but it will help you get used to them. The first one is noticing, where's your tongue in your mouth? This is one of the most fundamental questions of breathing retraining that we don't even consider, where our tongue is. So first of all, is it one down in the bottom of your mouth, touching the bottom teeth? 2, with the tip up against the roof of the mouth, but the rest is hammocked down? 3, up in the roof of the mouth fully, so it's completely sealed against the roof, but touching the teeth at the front? Or is it in the roof of the mouth, but pulled slightly back with the tip against the roof of the mouth only and not touching the teeth? So those are the
so hand to heart, which it is. My tongue at the tip was at the top, and then it was hammocked down.
Okay, cool. If anybody else wants to share theirs, they can with those numbers, but otherwise that's absolutely fine. So then you've got the next thing to look into. So as you keep your hands on, we're going to just notice where we feel the movement, because this is actually something that most people don't see and feel the same thing. So if you were looking in front of a mirror or a screen, you might notice it, or I might notice you move in a way that you don't feel. And what we're looking to see is if there any movement in the upper hand at all. Does it feel very vertical, lifting vertically, or is it very much it doesn't actually feel that bad, it's just there is movement? The thumb, can we feel that going out on the in-breath, so sort of swelling as the lungs go? Or is it inverting? Is it going inwards, being sucked in as your chest goes up? And then the third part is your little finger there. Can you feel any movement where you're sort of bloating out into the little finger from the belly as you breathe in? And just noticing for a moment until you've got that. Where can you feel it? Or is it a little bit of everywhere? Are you just feeling like you're just gently going? And it might be, some people will notice huge movement, like shoulders going up, tension, really lifting. And some people will notice like barely any breath, but they're not noticing it really in the central spot. They're noticing it kind of all over. So Tracy, what do you notice?
Okay, so I felt my top hand going out, almost like it would go forward like a ½ inch.
Yeah.
Or an inch or something like that. So not up, but forward.
Yeah.
The thumb, it didn't go in. It just kind of was rested there. Maybe it went a little bit forward and back, but it didn't go inside. Almost like it was just resting. And then I noticed that I was holding or squeezing my belly. I just also got over my period. So I might have just been habitually holding my right down here. So then when you said that, I let go of holding it. And then it felt like it moved a little bit.
Okay, cool. So that's the first assessment, and we'll come back to that in a minute to kind of go through what we should be looking for. And the next little assessment is pulling your hands to your sides of your ribs. So put them on your waist, then move them up, the thumbs behind your back. So splitting your thumb behind, that's it. Yeah. So take your waist, then go above your waist onto your ribs. and we're looking to hold that. Now, whilst you're doing that, everybody can see your hands. What I want you to do is do what you think is a deep breath, and we're going to see whether those hands move or whether your breasts move up, basically, whether there's going to be that lift in the upper chest.
Okay, so my deep breath.
Okay. And then do what you think is a exacerbated sport breath. And notice again, does it lift? Does it go out? Does it do a bit of both?
It's like almost like a round circle. It goes like up and over.
Okay. And the last one is,
and then I got a little dizzy.
And also notice,
Being
did you
honest.
go through the mouth, which I think you did on that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to have mouth breathing.
And the next one is, do what you think is a calm breath. Okay. Now, did anybody else notice the lift into the upper chest on all three of those? Not a huge lift, but there's still a lift. Yeah. So what we're actually looking for is the following, and I'll show you on me. So I've got stripes on purpose to actually help you to be able to see any movement or no movement. So this is what we call our D spot. And with our D spot on our diaphragm is here, and it plunges down as we breathe in and then goes back up again. It's attached all the way around. And then our ribs are just to either side of the diaphragm. So with this D spot here, when I'm just resting breathing, there shouldn't be any movement up here on the top hand. And there shouldn't actually be any movement in the lower finger either. That's often something we learn through yoga. But here is just the D spot. And it should be quite visible. Now, if I was to do a deep breath, most people who are over breathers or upper chest breathers will do this. And then they'll go out through their mouth usually. Now, what we're looking for here again is breathing into the D spot. It's deep, not big. If I said a deep ocean versus a big ocean, you'd notice the difference. So and you can see the stillness of the upper hand. Now, if I do a extended sport breath, this is where the movement should go. Which for some people feels completely inaccessible, and for others, they've got some movement there. And if you imagine the shape of the lungs here, this is the bottom of the lungs, and we have a dead space of the tree trunk when nothing happens, a dead space of the branches when nothing happens. You've got some leaves up here, which is a bit inefficient. So we're doing a lot of movement as upper chest breathers into this space to then really have very little oxygen and CO2 transfer. But in the base, in this canopy, we've got very little effort for a hell of a lot of gain. So you can see from a performance point of view in that sense, it makes a difference. And then the last bit is here. If we're pulling in sideways, we're then filling really full into that canopy rather than doing sport breath. Where if we're getting to the point where we're going extreme sport breath, yes, we can go up as well. But if you're doing, for example, cycling, long distance, we're trying to keep that real rhythm. Pulling it down and out and slowing your breath right down can be a huge difference rather than that heave and dump, where actually we've got very little control over those muscles up there. And yet your D spot and your ribs can start to become really, really well controlled. So can you see the difference between where we naturally go? Because if we have any anxiety or any stress in our life, or we start to change our habits, they sort of degrade slightly. Where, you know, if you think about how do you slouch on a sofa, are you compromising that D spot from moving? How do you read your phone and send a text message? Are you sort of hunched over forward, sat at the kitchen table, and compromising that D spot? And so by opening the D spot and allowing that to work, we're then correcting posture. We're bringing a bit more awareness to the whole body. And then we're also thinking, well, actually, we're trying to pull down deep as opposed to lifting high. And so we're not exacerbating. If everybody tries to do a gasp for me, and notice where that went, and that went up. Now, if you're an anxious type breather all day long, how do you notice the first trigger of anxiety or stress? Because you are already in that muscle group. Whereas if you don't live in that muscle group, it feels really weird. And as soon as it goes there, you're like, ugh, and you work on it and you get back down again. So it's this conscious level, the stress point of this, where this is something we really need to combat, is if we are using the wrong muscles, we can't notice the trigger. And if you think about it, should be triggering here and we're noticing here, but we're not. What's happening is we're continuing to breathe past the trigger, and then we start to go, I'm starting to feel quite, actually this is getting a bit much for me, I'm quite anxious, or I'm quite sort of, I'm feeling quite stressed now. And at this point we start to step in, and we're that far away from a panic attack, or feeling like we're going to shout at someone, or feeling like we don't know how we're going to come back down. And so retraining.
Well, this reminds me of the mindfulness class we just had with Ariadne, and we're going to post that really what mindfulness is about having the stimulus, that experience, and then creating a gap. I call it mind the gap between the stimulus and our response. And so actually what I'm hearing too is breathing retraining is about minding it, being mindful and having a gap, and then actually consciously breathing, so that we're creating that highway, that 3-lane highway, where we're having the breathing that's facilitating the oxygen and the carbon dioxide to do that.